Gina Carano is fired from The Mandalorian as Michael B. Jordan makes a deal with Amazon. Disney shuts down Blue Sky Studios, and Judas and the Black Messiah is released into theaters. I'm Joe Acierno.
I'm Darius Delsoin, and this is Cinema Unchained.
All right, how's it going, everybody? We've got a fantastic show for you today. We are going to be covering exactly what happened with Gina Carano and the drama surrounding her release from the popular Disney Plus series, The Mandalorian. We're going to be talking about the deal that Michael B. Jordan managed to make between his production company and Amazon Studios. Disney shutting down Blue Sky Studios, which I think is kind of a shock to a lot of people when you really think about like the movies they actually put out there. And we're going to be capping off the show with a review of the new film Judas and the Black Messiah. Now, before we get into Gina Carano's issues with Lucasfilm, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications, whether you're on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify, and follow our social media profiles listed in the description. Okay, so Gina Carano has had an interesting week, to say the least. Actress Gina Carano, who is known for playing Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, was fired this past Thursday by Lucasfilm after social media posts arguing a comparison of political persecution in the United States to Jews in Nazi Germany. Oh, all right. So, starting things off the light today, aren't we?
Yeah. So I know for me, when I heard about this, I was upset. I was like, wow, they've just fired Gina Carano. I know she's been a hot topic on social media as far as her posts and her political views. At the end of the day, how I see it is like it's just her political views and her thoughts. Like she's not enticing violence or anger or anything like that towards anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't support, or I'm not a fan of people going out of their way to try and get someone fired. Like that's never that like how low can you go to do something like that when you're just someone behind the screen or behind on Twitter? Like people don't know you. Like it's weird because it's like when you've seen not only the work that she's done, and you've seen just how much love and care she has for the Star Wars fans and the community in general. It's just like it's weird to see that they're trying either certain people either she is like this, is so-called racist, homophobic, whatever they want to say, or people trying to go out of the way and say that she is like that when she said multiple times that it's not a big deal for her. And amongst those lines, again, she's just, to me, she's that type of person where it's like you can't just tell her no and she'll just simply oblige.
Yeah,
I mean, she's an
she'll do what she
MMA
wants
fighter.
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's an MMA fighter. She's very independent, and that sort of thing is who she is. And so it's unfortunate that she apparently got fired.
Yeah.
And even the whole fire situation is kind of muddy because we're only hearing from one source, and anonymous source who doesn't have a name, that she's been fired. And I don't know, it's weird. Something about this just feels very off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not denying the fact that she got fired. Because
Yeah.
I don't know if you also heard, she was reached out to by conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, who runs the conservative media outlet The Daily Wire, and the two of them came to an agreement for her to develop, produce, and star in a future film with The Daily Wire, because The Daily Wire is actually getting into the entertainment industry. They recently released a, I guess like a thriller school shooter movie called Run, Hide, Fight. So
Ooh.
I'm not going to deny the viability of the fact that she got fired. But because I remember I heard about this and I'm like, all right, I guess that Cara Dune spinoff series isn't happening. And I'm thinking like, okay, like didn't the same thing happen to James Gunn where Disney fired him for tweets or whatnot from the past? But then I heard about this deal with Ben Shapiro, and I'm like, okay, never mind. I don't think she's going back to I don't think she's going back to Disney Plus like James Gunn kind of did.
I mean, even with the James Gunn situation, I think, because I do think there's definitely a lot of differences between the two. With the James Gunn situation, it was years ago that he made those comments and jokes, and they were uncovered. Whereas this one, she's proactively just saying what she wants to say. And Disney's probably like, hey, keep it calm or whatever. And then just a few days ago was the last straw.
Yeah.
So like where James Gunn it was years ago. Again, he probably hates it, what he said back then. And even he said that himself, and he feels sorry and everything. But at the end of the day, it's like those were years ago. It's not the person he is today.
Hmm.
And so with the Gina Carano situation, again, I liked her character a lot. She was actually my second favorite character in the entire Mandalorian series. As far as original characters, because of course we can talk about season two and the new character and the old characters they introduced. But as far as new original characters in Mandalorian, she was actually one of my favorite characters because she was very independent. She was very headstrong. She was very much herself. Um, and then you see some of her layers from a character that are uncovered, and it's like, oh, she's like one of the lasting survivors of this planet that blew up. It's I personally really liked her character, and Gina Carano really embodied it. Again, it's an original character, so it's kind of hers. So it's going to be feeling weird going forward. Either they kill her off completely, or they actually recast her.
Yeah, and I know, like, here's the thing, like, because like the topic of recasting has been brought up on numerous occasions, especially when it came to recasting T'Challa, from Chadwick Boseman, who unfortunately passed away. Um, I don't. My gut with recasting a character says that it's not gonna be received well.
Oh yeah,
So I
most
guess
likely
we'll
not.
just have to wait and see what happens as far as Gina Carano. But I'm just thinking, like, with this, like, who's next? Who's next for, like,
Yeah,
losing their jobs over, like, a couple of tweets, whether you like them or not. I do think every situation is different as far as those, but I mean, this seems like a bit much. But
yeah, for
again,
sure. And again, to me, it's like even with the post that she made and everything. Um, and I'm not trying to say I defend her or I defend Disney or whatever, but I'm
hmm,
just looking at a hopefully on a more factual basis, and what should be done going forward is that um whatever comparison or whatever people are getting upset about, you need to look at it into its full context and not
yeah,
what a lot of people are immediately jumping on. Because it's a situation where you're almost sort of on like this fine line of like, okay, now you're really going too far with it. You're not, whatever. It's this dance back and forth, and it's an unfortunate and uncomfortable dance because there's no common ground, and especially when you take things out of context or out of proportion, it gets handled very messily. And you have companies like Disney that's very reactive, and they just go on and say you're fired. And that's what
yeah,
happened with the James Gunn thing years ago of comments. Oh, they sprout up, you're fired. When it's like, come on, Disney, you he made those comments. There's no way you would hire someone without doing your research.
yeah, exactly. Like, you don't think Disney has, like, the resources to go that deep into someone's past? I mean, what they say about people,
Exactly,
about your employers going through your social media platforms to see whether or not you're up to the task or if you're a good fit, quote unquote. I mean, come on, like, they all do that. Like, anyone who says otherwise is completely naive. And Disney, who has more resources than most companies out there, like, they did that too. So
exactly. And you have even someone like Gina Carano who literally donated for charities and everything, and she's anti-bullying, and it's like, how can you go out your way to say that she's this type of person unless she's doing a really good job at lying and masking?
yeah,
But I personally doubt that. But it's this weird thing, especially with social media these days, and how people want to cancel other people just because they have a certain political view or just a certain perspective and a certain point of view. It's fine to have different views and everything. It's what makes us human and everything. We have disagreements, and hey, if if we're all talking about, oh hey, we hate disagreeing with each other or whatever, I'm surprised we lasted this long.
yeah. Honestly, yeah.
As a human society, like, I'm just gonna trying to put it into that perspective as well. A lot of things, a lot of change has occurred because of disagreements.
Hmm, exactly. And again, like, I do think that unwillingness to look at other people's perspectives is why there's so much craziness going on in the world today. Like, why, as a society, we seem to be extremely polarized, like much more than we need to be. Like, there's debating, and then there's just flat out polarization, and that's exactly where we are. And it's because of actions
Hmm.
like this. Um, and I'm sure too on Disney's end, like they have a certain family-friendly brand, quote unquote, that they want to keep up, and anything that they think might threaten that, or at least that they could argue would threaten that, like
Hmm.
you said, they're going to be very reactive on whether they're adjusting it or not. So
Yep.
I'm
And yet they're
curious
for
as
inclusion.
to what she's going to do moving forward. I want to see exactly how, as an actress, she continues to work, especially with I guess Ben Shapiro's company. So talking to you guys for just a second, what do you guys think of the controversy surrounding Gina Carano and her new uh, career possibilities going forward? Just type your mind in the comment section below. All right, so moving forward, Darius, I know you wanted to talk about this in particular. Michael B. Jordan made a deal
Yeah.
with Amazon Studios. So just um, take us a little bit more into that.
Of course. So, speaking of Gina Carano signing a deal with Ben Shapiro as well, Michael B. Jordan actually did so himself. And basically, with this situation, he has signed a deal with Amazon to produce a number of series and films exclusively for them. And one of the first one that they announced is a Muhammad Ali series. And
Oh,
so, Michael B.
series.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Mhm. And so what's interesting about this for me is that I'm a Michael B. Jordan fan. I will say
Thing.
that right now. I think he's one of those actors that is underrated and he should be looked at for the true talent that he has cuz I think not a lot of people, especially in the earlier days, can see the potential he has. And now he's starting to get a bit more famous. And to me, I'm like, nah, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah,
um, and
it's like
so
called
one of the
it.
great exactly, I'm like, called it. And so one of the great things about Michael B. Jordan, what he's doing is that not only is he is really I wanted to touch upon his production company, which is Outlier Society.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he did a couple years ago is that he's making this home for up and coming filmmakers, especially in the African American community and the minorities, to actually be on these movies, be on these sets. He has fellowships and internships for for people to be in his production company. And so hearing that not only he's including more up and coming filmmakers, but also the potential to be with Amazon and hopefully being on those sets or part of the development of those series, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And it's interesting also that I like this also because it's kind of just shows their Amazon and Michael B. Jordan's trust and partnership even more because he's already going to be a part of the new Tom Clancy movie coming out. So
Mhm.
it's just going to get stronger. And I think Michael B. Jordan has an eye for talent, and I think we're going to see a lot of interesting concepts and stories, hopefully from him. And if they're starting off with Muhammad Ali as a series, who else, especially in history, what other uh important characters in history as far as in uh, African American communities and that have been underrepresented or people don't know about and see their stories come to life. Because
Mhm.
I can already think of a handful that deserve a movie or series, and I think Michael B. Jordan's production company is a perfect place to do it.
And I do think their slate that they have announced so far is very interesting. I mean, that Muhammad Ali series. I mean, they've made movies about Muhammad Ali however many times. You have the Will Smith performance for about 20 years ago. You just had One Up Miami that featured Muhammad Ali in a very prominent role. So I do, and again, I don't know if they've made a series before, but the concepts and the idea of a series on Muhammad Ali is interesting because he was a guy, of course, that was larger than life in and out of the boxing ring. So I think
Yeah.
there are potentially a lot of directions that they could explore with a Muhammad Ali series. And then, of course, you have the next installment in the Creed franchise, which I didn't even know was going to happen. I thought they were done at 2 because I remember walking out of Creed
No,
2
they're gonna
and
make
everyone
another one.
basically said that, like, okay, this is the perfect ending. We don't need another Creed movie because it seems like that like just a lot of things were wrapped up. But I guess we're getting another one. I hope that this doesn't turn into like, Karate Kid 3, where the first two movies were good and Karate Kid 3 was like total dog shit. So
Let's
you
not talk
have
about
that.
Karate Kid 3.
Yeah, no, I sat through Karate Kid 3, but like I'm happy I did just so I can understand and appreciate Cobra Kai even more. But that's a story for another day. But on top of that, you also have another directorial effort from Denzel Washington coming up too. So coming off of, I believe the last one he directed Fences? Because I know Fences was, I never watched it, but I heard Fences was very well received.
I think so. I don't remember entirely.
And I remember he also directed another movie called The Great Debaters that we had to watch in English class because we were learning about rhetoric and like forming arguments and stuff like that. And that was in like the 11th grade. That movie's from like '07, I want to say. And that was a solid movie too. So anything, and I said this when we reviewed The Little Things, despite how much that movie sucked. Anything with Denzel Washington attached to it, like, of course, has my interest.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think this just shows the power that not only Michael B. Jordan has, but just companies like his have as well. Because now you're bringing in A-list actors and like Denzel Washington to be a part of these production companies, to be a part of these teams. And I think it's just going to propel especially the representation and industry of the Black community even further. And it's going to come to a point where it's like we're all dreaming big about maybe being into Hollywood or whatever. But it's like if we can be around others like us, around people like Michael B. Jordan, around like Ryan Coogler, be a part of those production companies or whatever, I think that's just gonna leave it at B. Because it's like, how much further do you want to like go into Hollywood if you're almost underrepresented compared to, hey, if I can at least get into production companies like Michael B. Jordan, like Ryan Coogler, where, hey, they did make it, but you know what? They're still supporting and investing in young African Americans and young just people in general to come up and to start.
They're
their
trying to
own
give a
thing
hand
as
up,
well.
basically.
Exactly. So, and again, that's great amongst everything because it's like, hey, we're gonna help you out, come up. You still should be talented and you still should be passionate about this anyway. But we also want to hear your voice and to hope and maybe invest in your stories or whatever. Again, I think this is great across all news, really, and I'm excited. So
Yeah, so I'm definitely intrigued to say the least. It was interesting to see that story suggested on the template for this particular episode when I was looking at it. So yeah, what do you guys think about the creative slate that's coming up with Michael B. Jordan's production company, and what do you think of Michael B. Jordan rubbing shoulders with Jeff Bezos? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. And before we move on
did
to
he step down now?
Oh shoot, yeah, I know he's still going to be involved in the company somewhat. So
I
listen,
think he's part of the board, but I think
yeah, he's still
down.
going to
Anyway,
be part of the board. So like he's going to be he's going to shake his
He's
hand
still-
or like
he's still
rub or
Amazon.
bump the shoulder or bump the elbow at some point. So they're still
Yeah.
going to do that. But before we move on to the whole the death of Blue Sky Studios, if you haven't gotten a chance yet, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify, and follow all of our social media profiles listed in that description below. All right, now, Darius, I'm going to let you introduce this one again because it's another suggestion of yours, and I think you're a bit more into it than I am, and I feel like you have just a little bit more to say.
I have a lot to say. Disney, how dare you? So apparently, just to start off, how dare you? They shut down, if you know this studio, especially one of its most popular franchises, the Ice Age franchise.
Yep.
It's been huge amongst years. I grew up with that franchise.
Same here.
Well, the animation studio Blue Sky that was basically created it has been shut down by Disney.
Mhm.
And I am very hurt by this. I love Blue Sky Studios. Like as a kid, Ice Age was like one of my Ice Age was that animated film that almost everyone knew about.
Yep.
And they always pumped out another one. And no matter how silly it gets, it's still Ice Age. And to me, how I see this is like, oh, no more Ice Age. We're closing that door, closing that chapter. So, I mean, but I understand why Disney did that because Disney already has a bunch of animation studios in the first place. And of course, their biggest one is Pixar.
Yeah,
So
outside of Walt Disney Animation Studios alone, Pixar, of course, I think is right up there with them.
Exactly. Like and these are top tier animation studios as well. And I'm not saying Blue Sky isn't. Like they create Ice Age. I'm sorry, that's top tier for me. So, um, I can understand why they're doing that. Plus, they acquired Fox for a hefty price tag, so I can understand why they may want to maybe trim some of the fat from Fox as well.
Mhm.
Of like, hey, maybe we don't need Blue Sky. We already have Pixar and Walt Disney Animation. Lucasfilm also has their own animation stuff, so it's like we don't need to. And Lucasfilm was also branching out into other properties and not just Star Wars, which is cool. But also, oh boy. But anyway, back to the Blue Sky situation. um, it's it's sad to see this chapter of Blue Sky end like this because it's like I think, but also I'm interested because it's like okay, they're gonna shut down Blue Sky. Will they at least allocate those animators and those artists and maybe the lead animators or whatever as part of Pixar, as part of their other studios
Mm.
per se? That's going to be an interesting thought going forward as well because it's like, are they going to completely fire everyone and they're all out, or are they going to be like, you know what, you did this property and you did it well, you're going to come into Pixar, you're going to come into Walt Disney Studios,
Mhm.
animation studios. So it's going to be interesting going forward how they do they completely shut it off completely, or they start bringing in some of those special talents.
Well, I do think that I thought I read or heard something about them allocating some animators to other potential roles in Disney. But from what I do know,
Okay.
I don't think they're going to completely get rid of the franchises or anything like that. Well, they're not going to completely erase Blue Sky Studios' trace because the television series for the Ice Age characters is actually in development at Disney Plus. But as far as like the
They
whole
say what now?
Blue Sky Studios situation itself, I understand why it's happening because like a lot of things got impacted by, of course, COVID-19. Thank you so much. And they had, and even Disney got something as big as Disney got impacted by this. They got hit by this, in the terms of like film releases and making money in the theaters, and theme parks and cruise lines. So of course something had to give. And of course, this comes after they acquired 20th Century Fox. Blue Sky Studios was indeed a Fox property. Now, as far as like my personal attachment to it, of course, like Blue Sky Studios definitely had some hits. Obviously, the Ice Age films were a big deal. 1 and 2 were solid movies. I think I might have actually liked 2 a little bit better. 3 annoyed the crap out of me. 4, I saw bits and pieces of. I'm like, eh. And then I saw like the premise for 5. I'm like, all right, this is a little ridiculous. This is a little
It's
ridiculous. And now
Ice
they're in
Age. What
space.
can you expect?
So it's like, all right, come on, let's try a little harder. Let's try a little harder. But it's somewhat of a shock to say the least. Reading something like that, because again, like that this is another animation studio that I remember vividly seeing the opening logos for it a lot of times when I went to the
Yep.
movies. I also know that another Blue Sky animated film that was in the process of being made was called Nimona. It was halted in production because of COVID-19, and it was actually scheduled for release on January 14th of next year, but that's all been canceled. The production's been canceled. The release has been canceled. So, it's sad to say the least. I
Mm.
understand why it's happened though,
Yeah,
but
exactly. Like this is to me, this definitely feels like they're trimming more of the fat from Fox than anything
mhm,
else.
yeah,
And and in a certain way, I'm like, okay, you have Pixar, you have Walt Disney Animation, two biggest animated studios. Why don't you? A part of me is like, why don't you just make Blue Sky bigger? Now you have three big animated studios that can produce even more animation, either series, movies, or whatever, across Disney Plus and film and theaters and etc. But I mean, it already happened, so it's not like I can go down to Walt Disney's anime or the corporation with a pickaxe and be like, "Hey, give it
yeah,
back to me."
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
It's
just
it's a
like
little late for that.
yeah, maybe I should have done it earlier, but oh well.
Yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda. So,
Yeah.
to everyone listening, just out of curiosity, like, do you have the same attachment to Blue Sky Studios that we did, or really that Darius did? Obviously, much more than me. Are you going to miss Blue Sky Studios? Again, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, and as I said before, we're going to cap off the show with a review of the new film Judas and the Black Messiah, and the film follows an FBI informant, or the FBI informant named William O'Neill, as he infiltrates the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party in order to neutralize the chapter's chairman, Fred Hampton. Film stars Lakeith Stanfield as O'Neill, Jesse Plemons as FBI agent Roy Mitchell, Dominique Fishback as Deborah Johnson, and the one and only Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton.
Yes.
So, Darius, what'd you think?
So this was actually one of my most anticipated films as well, because part of me is like, I forgot about it, but then once I saw the trailer again, I was like, yes, I want to see this.
Yep.
And so, after watching it, I was just blown away at Shaka King's directorial yet again. Like, he really encapsulated really the emotional impact back then when it came to racial prejudice and oppression in the United States. And so seeing in some of the performance, like Daniel Kaluuya, I just want to talk about him real quick. I
Yes.
loved him in Get Out. I think he's a great actor. I wish he had more in Black Panther. This truly showed more of his range and what he can bring to the table. And it reminded me to a certain extent, his performance actually reminded me of John David Washington in Malcolm and Marie, just range wise and how much and
Really?
how encapsulating he can be as a prolific figure, as someone that people looked up to and people wanted to help out and people wanted to come together. And here's another thing I liked about this film. Not only did he bring a bit of his African American community together, hopefully, to better change, but he also reached out to the Caucasian community and the
Yeah.
Confederates and that sort of, and it just,
Which
to
I was shocked
me,
to see that in the movie, too.
I was shocked to see, because if you know history, you know why that's like, why would you do that? But I was seeing it more as he's trying to bring together people of oppression that have been oppressed, just in general, black, white, Hispanic. Like, he was bringing all of them together. And when I saw that moment, I was like, this is important. This is great. And I love this because it's like he's showing unity amongst everyone, and it's not confined to just one race, or maybe having a mentality of being one race is better than the other. He's like, nah, you've been oppressed, let's get together, that sort of thing. And so this movie overall, I absolutely loved it. There was times I did feel that it was rushed a bit, mainly because they did time skips, and that threw me off a bit, because I was like, like, I wish I had more time with these characters, or to grow a bit more, to connect with them a bit more, from just a character progression and character arc point of view.
You see, that's interesting because I kind of felt the opposite. I felt like there were times where the movie actually dragged the hair. And as far as like character,
I was going to get to that too.
And I felt like it definitely drags a tiny bit. And I was wondering, like, okay, does this feel like a little unfocused at certain points? Because I feel like it goes off onto certain tangents with certain characters. But I'm like, you know what? This is still them developing the characters. And I think as a result of that, like, they embodied the characters, or they fully developed the characters much better than they would have if they had just rushed through everything, of course. As far as Daniel Kaluuya's performance, obviously, he's an immense presence. He's great in Get Out. I thought he gave a very underrated performance in Widows. I don't know if you remember that movie that came out a couple years ago. He was absolutely phenomenal. It was like a crime heist film. It was like a heist film with like this giant cast, and he stood out in that giant cast. He was absolutely amazing. And this film is no different too. Like I said, from the first time that he spoke, like first line of dialogue that he delivered, I'm like, okay, he's gonna be a big deal. He's gonna be a big deal in this movie. He's gonna knock it out of the park, and that's exactly what he did. One of the other things that I love from a character perspective, or really from a character placement perspective, was the FBI informant, Bill O'Neill, played by Lakeith Stanfield. He was number one. He gave a great performance too. He was very, very good. And then I love how the film basically shows like his character is between a rock and a hard place, because if he goes against the FBI, they'll screw him. They'll throw him in jail. They'll throw him in jail. And if the Black Panthers find out about him, they'll kill him. Because there's that one scene, or like that one reference to the Panthers doing something to a guy that they found out was an informant too, and like the means that they went to take care of that guy. So there are a lot of extreme consequences on both sides, which is very interesting. And I loved watching that inner conflict, or really that inner strain unfold. and I think Lakeith Stanfield like really did a great job with that. And overall, like the film, there are a lot of like really electric moments. The action and it feels odd to say that the violence is very pulsating, but like the action and the violence, of course, like tend to go hand in hand, and both of them had like a very pulsating feel to it. Like it was both not easy to watch, but at the same time, like I couldn't take my eyes off of them. Like holy, like shit.
Yeah,
Like,
it was sometimes hard to watch. Yeah, and the truth behind that is that this is also sort of this is a autobiographical picture as well. Like this, the characters they're playing were real people. You know, like
mhm,
Fred Hampton was a member of the Black Panther Party and everything. Amongst those lines, he was betrayed, and etc. And so, just seeing not just the dynamic between the main two characters, but also there's a moment in the film that and I don't want to spoil it because it's a
mhm.
pretty hefty moment that I was just like, really felt unnerved. I felt so impacted mainly because of how they shot it, and it was just so disheartening. And especially what comes next after that just kind of showed just how much anger has built up and within a bunch of these communities, and just being like the idea of being oppressed should not be a glorified thing, you know. And I think when it comes to and I think adaptations in general, when we adapt history, when we adapt um characters in history, we need to be honest and able to show all sides of it,
Mhm.
um unhinged, unchained, essentially, you know. um
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
so is these type of films I think we definitely need more of, because films have played such a important moment in our history, and even going forward, because it's like people watch movies, people watch series, we're always into that. So seeing more movies like this, more autobiographicals like this, like Harriet, coming out more often, and even sprinkling in a bit of hope of what's possible going forward, I absolutely love. And I think Judas and the Black Messiah showed the some disgusting aspects of it, but also shows some of the hope of unity that we can all have as America and as a people. Because last thing we need is another. I mean,
Another
history
reason
goes
to
to show, you know.
another
So
reason to go at each other's throats, basically. But
exactly, and we're already in a pandemic. We don't need more division
yeah,
as it is, you know.
yeah. Just like we're getting an assembly line of a division at this point, and who knows what it's going to end or how it's going to end. But here we are. We still stand.
Exactly.
S-
But
So,
the to wrap up my thoughts on the movie,
mhm,
I thought it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. Some of the pacing did feel off because to me it felt like they were jumping through time, and I was like, okay, that was a bit too quick for me or whatever. But everything else, cinematography, uh, I do want to touch on cinematography as well.
yeah,
There's certain shots and certain scenes I cannot see, and I know why, but I just for some reason I couldn't really see it entirely, and it felt very off-putting. And I was just like, "Wow, you went for this long in the dark." I couldn't really get a sense of what you were trying to do. So I will just say that, sort of cinematography wise, that there are definitely some scenes that are maybe a bit too dark for me to see.
mhm,
Um, because like again, just how they lit it and everything, I was like, I can't really make out what's happening. But I understood why they went with that stylistic choice. But overall, I love the movie. I thought it
yeah.
was great. Daniel Kaluuya definitely was stellar. Lakeith, stellar. Everything about it was really polarizing and stellar. And I think people should really see this for sure.
I think so too. But like touching on what you were saying as far as like the cinematography, honestly, I'd have a problem with the cinematography at all. And like I know the things that you're talking about when it comes to like certain
Yeah,
things being too dark, but like
only some, not all.
I know what they were going for in those certain scenes.
Exactly.
Understood enough. I saw enough that like when things went back into the darkness, I'm like, okay, I still have an idea of what's going on, and the effect that they're going for, in my opinion, worked. The only
Yes.
thing I had a problem with on the technical front was that like there were a decent amount of times where it was hard to understand what they were saying to each other. Like I just like couldn't catch like certain
That
things,
too.
certain pieces of dialogue. Um, but yeah, nothing. Again, nothing terrible or anything like that on the technical front at
Yeah,
all.
not terrible.
Just like
Yeah.
certain inconveniences here and there with being understand the dialogue. But overall, I thought this was a very well done film. Electric to say the least. Performances across the board were terrific. especially Daniel Kaluuya. They're already saying Oscar nomination for him.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it would be very well deserved. Definitely worth the. The movie's about 2 hours and 5 minutes long. If it was like maybe like a tiny bit shorter, maybe just went like a tiny bit quicker, like maybe it was like 5 or 10 minutes shorter, I think the timing or pacing, everything like that would have been absolutely perfect. But yeah, definitely well worth the time. That it was worth what I spent to watch this
20
film.
years later, and that actor's still playing a dick character.
Yeah. Wait, which actor?
The FBI. Him.
Oh, the Martin Sheen who played J. Edgar Hoover. Oh, he was really good too.
He was good. He's still playing.
He was really good
he
too. Every scene with him shocked me a little bit. Like it wasn't like a big performance too, but it was still like menacing, like a very quiet way.
Yeah, exactly.
So honestly, good on him for pulling that off. And he's not in
like,
a lot of scenes too.
Man, this dick.
Yeah, there's always been a lot of controversy surrounding J. Edgar Hoover, but we don't need to get into that today. All right, now for everyone who's still with us, what did you guys think of Judas and the Black Messiah? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And just like that, episode 7 is done. And Darius, thank you for doing this with me yet again. Thank you all for tuning in. And if you have not gotten a chance to yet, of course, I have to say this one more time. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Apple or Spotify. And follow our social media profiles listed in the description below. And until next time, thank you for tuning in.